Welcome everyone to a brand new episode of Beyond Action. As always, I'm your host Merloski. And if you're new here and you don't know what I'm doing, then it's basically just a podcast or YouTube, depending on where you're looking, where I just talk and just express my various opinions and theories on the ever-changing entertainment industry. It's always changing. There are always new movies coming out. The system is always changing. So it's nice to be able to keep up and nice to be able to talk to you guys, which either you know a lot about movies or you might not know anything about movies. That's really just up to you. And if you want to learn more, then you have me here. And if you don't, then I'm also here to just entertain you. Last week we looked at time travel, the Flashpoint Paradox, Avengers Endgame, Click, and just all the implications that time travel has to do with those types of movies. And if you haven't watched it, I do recommend that you go watch it. And before that, we watched Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which my review for that movie is out now. It was a very good movie, very good experience. I highly enjoyed it, and I would recommend that all of you watch it. But today we're not talking about Ant-Man. No, today we are talking about a different critter that crawls around and stuff. We are talking about the most famous superhero in probably all of comic book history. Spider-Man is an icon for all children of all sizes, and I am also a fan of Spider-Man. Even me, that I'm about to be an adult, I am a fan of Spider-Man. And so I just think that it is very important for me to tell you all what Spider-Man is all about, and how can I do that better than talking about my favorite Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. Yes, I know that we all have different opinions, and I would love to hear which Spider-Man is your favorite Spider-Man down in the comment section down below. Please type a comment and just tell me what your favorite Spider-Man is and why. I would love to hear all the reasons behind that. For me personally, it is Andrew Garfield. Although his trilogy, well, more like a duology, is very incomplete, it does have some moments that stand out to me and make me feel like he is my Spider-Man. I know my opinion is going to be different to what you guys think, but I still want to hear about all your different opinions. If you're not aware with what I'm talking about and don't even know who Andrew Garfield is, then you have definitely been living under a rock, because Andrew Garfield is a super famous movie actor that in the year 2012, 2013-ish, he took the role of Spider-Man. A role that a lot of people would call kind of career suicide, because now people are only going to know you for that role, and anytime that anyone sees you in a movie, you're automatically just going to be Spider-Man. But I think it is a pretty amazing role to take. The Amazing Spider-Man is the Spider-Man that has been mostly labeled a waste of potential. It was a very good movie going in the very good direction. And then by the second movie, they try to cram a lot of it in, trying to explore the Sony universe, the Sony Marvel universe, where they would try to bring in the Sinister Six and just all of that, and didn't really build Spider-Man right where they needed to. They just kind of rushed into it just to give all the fan service that they needed to do. And so yes, it is counted as a waste of potential, because this movie had a lot of potential. You could have had the most amazing Spider-Man with the most amazing story, but sadly we didn't. If you have never seen The Amazing Spider-Man, watch out. I will be spoiling the movie. Although it has been out for over 10 years now, I do have to say that just in case. The Amazing Spider-Man starts following Peter Parker, like we have seen with the Tobey Maguire series, or if you saw any of the animated series, then you know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, our normal Spider-Man. Then you also go into Miles Morales and those that are from parallel universes. But today is not the day to talk about the multiverse. Today is just a day to talk about Andrew Garfield. So, Peter Parker, he's this nerd in high school that he likes photography. He's very smart. He designs his own webs, but he's just still a nerd. And in this movie, they try to explore more about his parents and his parents' disappearance, because if you're not aware, Peter Parker was orphaned as a boy, and so his Aunt May and Uncle Ben took him into their house, and so he grew up under Aunt May and Uncle Ben, And he gets to the age where he's kind of curious about his parents. Like, hey, I don't know what happened to my mom. I don't know what happened to my dad. And his parents and aunt and uncle don't really know how to properly tell him what way to go, because he's in a fragile state where he doesn't know what happened to his parents, but neither do his aunt and uncle. Like, they just kind of disappeared, and they died in a plane crash, and that was that. There's going to be no more questions, no more anything. They just held on to him, and they raised him like they could, and they did a really good job. But in high school, Peter Parker gets bullied. In this movie, he's like a bit more of a like cool nerd, if that makes sense. Like, he rides around in his skateboard and he does all of these different things. He likes the very attractive girl in class, Emma Stone, or in this movie, Emma Stone is playing Gwen Stacy. If you're not familiar with Gwen Stacy, and you probably know who Mary Jane is, or MJ, because of the very popular Tom Holland series, then it's no surprise, but basically just Gwen Stacy is a different type of Spider-Man love interest, where Spider-Man likes basically a lot of girls. He likes Gwen Stacy, Black Cat, Mary Jane. Usually he goes with Mary Jane, but in this story they try to make it different than the original, and so they brought in Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy. And then we go into showing how Gwen Stacy is tutoring his bully, Peter Parker's bully. We go into that where Peter Parker's getting picked on, and then Gwen says something about some tutoring lessons that basically just makes Flash, or the bully, kind of back off. And so after backing off, then Spider-Man, or in this case Peter Parker, just goes and talks to her a bit, and he says that he had it handled, and you know, just trying to impress the girl that you like. Every guy knows that, and every guy does that. Then he goes home, and there was a flood in the basement, or something like that, something where a lot of water came in. And so they were moving some boxes so that they don't get wet, and you know, wet boxes are the worst thing to do. So they move the boxes, and Peter Parker finds his dad's purse, or not really a purse, but it's like a working bag. Yeah, he finds his dad's working bag. I know I said purse, but who cares? So he finds his dad's working bag, and so he starts to like kind of look around with it. His aunt and uncle are very surprised to see that he is like starting to investigate a bit more about his parents' disappearance, and they start to like kind of like freak out, because if Peter starts to look too much into his parents' disappearance, he might forget the life that he's made with his aunt and uncle. And so he's looking around, and then he decides to looking around, he sees that Dr. Curtis Connors might know something about his dad, because his dad used to work at Oscorp. Dr. Curtis Connors is the leading scientist of the human genetics division in Oscorp, or cross-species genetics, whatever you like to think about. He is leading cross-species genetics, and so Peter goes to Oscorp to get help, where that is where he will get bitten by a spider after infiltrating a tour. He goes and gets bitten by a spider. After getting bitten by the spider, his body kind of like starts to change. You've seen like all the memes where Spider-Man is like taking on and off his glasses. You know all that. But here he does it different, where he's in a subway and his senses start to like come in. He starts to move faster, and he starts to react faster, react stronger, and a lot of that starts to happen, and he can't control what, like the stickiness. He can't control it, so he's just grabbing random things and grabbing random people, ripping their clothes off, and it's a really funny scene where you kind of see that type of Peter Parker getting used to his powers, not like they showed it in Tobey Maguire's, where he like kind of just had abs and like just all that kind of stuff, where he kind of just became the superhero. Here, Peter was starting to understand, like, hey, what the hell happened? Now I have powers from a genetically enhanced spider. So what they were doing in Oscorp was they were trying to make these spiders I don't really understand, but they were trying to do some cross species genetics things, and it ended up being the perfect bond with Peter Parker. That actually comes down later in the line when you look at the Amazing Spider-Man 2. But for now, let's just stay on the continuity, like I'm basically just explaining to you guys the movie. So he gets home and he is in shock that he is now as strong as he is, as sticky as he is, and as fast as he is. So, like any normal teenager, he just goes to sleep and eats a lot, which his parents think that it is. I say parents, but it's because they treated him as a kid, so he's basically their son. Although he might not completely be the son that they're supposed to be. Yeah, no, they're definitely like parents to him. So, after waking up after getting bit by the spider, he starts to notice the changes. Where in other Spider-Man, they kind of just like get used to it very fast. Here, he is like not used to being a strong, so a very powerful scene that they like, not powerful, but a very like interesting scene that they have is when he tries to pour toothpaste on his toothbrush. He squishes it to try to get it out, and it goes all over the wall because he can't control it. Then he breaks the water pipe, and then he starts to break everything and just can't really do anything about it. So he goes to school just as half-assed as he could. He just goes to school. At school, he's there at school, and then he starts to kind of like play around with his changes a bit. Starting to notice a bit more of what's taking place. And so now with the reactions and the strength that he has, he decides to stand up to his bully. His bully kind of like throws the ball over at him, and he starts to embarrass him. He breaks a backboard of the basketball. He breaks the backboard, and then obviously Uncle Ben has to like take off work to come pick him up from school because he probably got like OSS, out of school suspension, and his parents have to fix the damages of what happened. So he goes with Uncle Ben, and Uncle Ben starts to tell him like, "Hey, just pick up your Aunt May, and it'll all be fine." Instead of picking up his Aunt May, he just like kind of like goes and plays around with like his new powers and his new strength and stuff like that. He gets late to the house, and after being late to his house, Uncle Ben finds him, and Uncle Ben gives him the scolding of a lifetime. And so he tells him that with great power comes great responsibility. He says it in a different word. He says that if you have the power to do something, then it is your moral obligation to do it. Which is, with great power comes great responsibility, which is what the character Spider-Man is mostly known for. After getting that speech, Spider-Man gets mad and he just leaves. He leaves his house and goes and tries to buy some chocolate milk or something like that. And he doesn't have enough money, so he just kind of like... He gets mad at the teller, and so then someone comes and robs the place. Once they rob the place, they give Spider-Man the milk, and so, just something normal. And so when he's the guy's running away, because obviously they call the police and stuff like that. But no, he starts running, and Spider-Man has the perfect abilities and time to take him down, but he decides not to. He decides to just let him pass, because he believes that, like, it's karma. Like, hey, you didn't want to, like, just give me, like, 1 cent for the milk. Then this is your karma. So, after walking down a bit more, Uncle Ben sees the person that robbed him. And so he starts to kind of, like, fight with the person. A gun falls on the ground, and the robber ends up shooting Uncle Ben. And Uncle Ben ends up dying. Yes, I know it is probably a shock to you all, because... if you ever heard of Spider-Man, you know that the most important thing in Spider-Man's story is with great power comes great responsibility, and Uncle Ben dying. After Uncle Ben dies, then Spider-Man becomes the Spider-Man that we know, and so he starts to go through a few of the trials, and he starts to make his suit, make his web shooters, make them better. And it's a very good montage. It's a very good movie. I highly enjoyed this movie. This movie is one of my favorite superhero movies of all time, because it's just so good. I really enjoy how they depict a Spider-Man coming of age, and how losing his uncle really affected him as much as it did. So, he loses his uncle, and just becomes Spider-Man. And so now he's balancing work life, well, like high school life, with being Spider-Man and trying to find out what happened with his parents. So he starts to meet up more and more with Dr. Curtis Connors. And Dr. Curtis Connors, the cross-species geneticist, sees that Peter has an ability to make good in the world. And so he and like Peter with his dad's journal come up with an equation to make sure that you can, like, that humans would be able to regrow limbs, but it comes at a cost. What does that cost, you might ask? Turning into a giant lizard. And so that is where Dr. Curtis Connors becomes the lizard. And so now we have Spider-Man against the lizard. And that was just the introduction part of the movie. Then we have the whole movie where the police are trying to prosecute Spider-Man, and then the lizard is going against Spider-Man. And so the movie just kind of like goes off with that story. Spider-Man is on a revenge hunt trying to find the killer of Uncle Ben. There's a lot going on, but it's very centered around Peter Parker and how Peter Parker is going through his life being Spider-Man. Then Peter Parker ends up finding out that the villain and the lizard is Dr. Curtis Connors, and that he was the person that gave Dr. Curtis Connors the ideas and the ability to turn himself into a giant lizard. So obviously you start to feel a bit bad for, unleashing that person or like thing on the world, but he decides that it is his duty to stop him. He even tries to go to the police and saying Dr. Curtis Connors is dangerous. Nobody listens to him. So he decides to do it himself, gets shot by the police while trying to make it to Oscorp Tower, where the lizard is going to shoot the virus all over the city, making the whole city into giant lizards. But Spider-Man is on his way, gets shot by the police, and so now he can't move very well, and the police are kind of like there, like not knowing to detain him. And when I said Gwen Stacy, his girlfriend there, yeah, well, her dad is kind of the captain of the police force, so, dating a person that is kind of an outlaw, and yeah, it's not a very good thing. So he gets shot, gets unmasked by Captain Stacy, and so Captain Stacy is now, like, met up with an impossible challenge, like, do I listen to my daughter's boyfriend, or do I capture the masked vigilante? I think that he did the right decision with letting him go and letting him fight, which actually Captain Stacy gets in a car and goes to Oscorp Tower to save his daughter, because his daughter is there in the tower where she was synthesizing a cure to the virus that Dr. Curtis Connors was about to unleash. And after a very cool fight, you see that Captain Stacy is there fighting with Spider-Man and ends up dying because of the lizard. Spider-Man, in the end, he puts his cure in, and so the cure gets dispersed, but not without significant damage to the tower that they had, the Oscorp Tower, like not without significant damage to the like cellular line that they were using to transperse the virus. And so it starts to fall. Spider-Man throws himself off the building, which that was like a part that I was like, okay, yes, he's Spider-Man, but he's not immune to fall damage. He should still take damage. But hey, plot armor and all of that is something that you can never account for. And so right as he's about to fall off the building, Dr. Curtis Connors grabs him with his like hand that's about to get taken away. He grabs him with his good hand and pulls him up. And now Dr. Curtis Connors is obviously going to be imprisoned for what he did. But yeah, so now the lizard has been detained and Spider-Man is okay. But Captain Stacy sadly passes away and asks Spider-Man if Gwen could stay away from him, because he's living a very dangerous life. And if his villains understood that the hero has someone that he cares about, they're going to obviously go after her. So like any normal person, she said, yes, I will try to do that. But we all know how that ends up, and he doesn't really stay away from her and just that kind of like segues into the second movie, which that was my first explanation on the first movie. A very good movie, a very good story where it expressed Spider-Man's background and who he is and why he is. It explains his vendetta against the person who killed Uncle Ben. It explains his want to know what happened to his parents, because like everything we knew about the Tobey Maguire series is just you have Aunt May, you have Uncle Ben, which is now dead, but you don't have anything apart from that. And so it's a very interesting thing. I'm gonna try to keep this one a bit more brief. This movie wasn't as good as the first one, but I'm gonna try to keep a brief understanding of the second movie. The second movie starts with Spider-Man doing a Spider-Man thing, graduating, and all of that. Then he saves someone from a car hitting him, which the Rhino is the one driving the car. But that's not very important because the movie ends up getting canceled anyway at the end. So he saves this person, and then this person gets obsessed. Jamie Foxx is the actor. I think it's Max Dillon. Yes, it's Max Dillon, the villain, which is Electro. Electro, he goes to work at Oscorp and then falls into a vat of electric eels that are also genetically modified. If you can figure out one thing, is that most problems in this like universe come from Oscorp. Okay, yes, Spider-Man comes from Oscorp, but so does the Lizard. Norman Osborn, which is the director of Oscorp, is the Green Goblin in the first trilogy, but in this one he kind of just dies. But his son ends up taking the mantle of Green Goblin, Harry. Then you have in this series they were supposed to have the Venom symbiote, the Rhino, Dr. Octavius. Everything bad just comes from Oscorp, so I don't really understand how they maintain having business for that long. But hey, it's a movie. It's a fictional world. Let's not get like too hell-bent over that. So then Peter Parker goes and he's living his life and everything is perfect. Yes, Max Dillon fell into a vat of electric eels and then he will show up in Times Square, not knowing what the hell happened, just knowing that he is attracted to electricity and power. But Peter Parker tries to get back together with Gwen Stacy after everything that happened. And so they're kind of like being friends, but like a bit more than friends. When he realizes what is going on, he goes and saves everyone at Times Square. And Electro doesn't like that because Spider-Man is stealing the attention from him. And everyone's seeing him as a villain instead of the person that he wanted to be, a good guy. And so it kind of starts to play with his mind, aside from all the electric eels, just like messing with his mind a lot. So he decides to try to kill Spider-Man in that, but Spider-Man just saves everyone and they incarcerate him and everything. So everything seems fine. Spider-Man seems perfect. And then you have the fact that Harry Osborn, which is Norman Osborn's son, Spider-Man's best friend. It is very hard to explain this family tree, so you might want to go see the movie to like actually understand what I'm saying. But they have a friendship, and what Harry knows is that Peter Parker takes photos of Spider-Man for the Daily Bugle, and knowing that, Harry thinks that Peter and Spider-Man are friends, and so he can ask him for some of his blood that might actually save Harry from his genetic disease, which is why they were testing on spiders, why they were testing with lizards. This is why the cross-species genetics system of Oscorp was so big, because they wanted to save their founder, which ends up dying. But then the son of the founder, which ends up becoming the CEO of Oscorp, ends up trying to speed up the process, sees the spider venom, takes it, and ends up becoming the Green Goblin. Most of the movie I feel like is very filler. I didn't like this movie as much as the first one, but it just has like some very cool fight scenes, amazing webs, like the design and the CGI of Spider-Man swinging through the city is just amazing in this movie. If I can like give this movie like the perfect rating for something, it would be those web swinging designs. It was amazing to see in the theaters. But at the end, Harry and Electro end up teaming up. So now you have a lot of villains going up against one Spider-Man. Spider-Man ends up killing Electro because he overfries him and overloads his circuits. Then you have Harry, which comes in and ends up taking Gwen Stacy and ends up killing her in a way. They go up a clock tower, they fight in the clock tower, and then you have the whole fight in the clock tower happens, and Gwen Stacy is kind of just like hanging with the clock gears. They just like kind of like shut her off, and so the web breaks. He doesn't get to her on time, and so she ends up breaking her neck from the fall of falling down an entire clock tower, which is pretty understandable. And so basically the movie just ends, and there is a one deleted scene that I will never forgive Sony for taking out, and it is when Spider-Man, Peter Parker, is at Gwen Stacy's grave because he, like, obviously your girlfriend dies, you're going to go see her a lot. And so he's at her grave, and all of a sudden his dad shows up. This movie explores more the idea of the parents and stuff like that, which I loved. At the beginning of the movie, you have the plane crash that killed his parents, or so killed, because here in the deleted scenes you have Spider-Man's dad alive and telling him that he needed to go into hiding to make sure that he could grow up safely. And everything was just different now that you know that his dad survived and his mom died. And so it's a very interesting scene, knowing that they take it out, because they didn't have to take it out. It would have been perfect inside of it, and I would have loved it a lot more because it would have made my mind think a bit more. But it did show, the movie did show that the spiders that gave Spider-Man his powers were genetically made for Peter Parker. Like the Peter Parker's dad needed a, what's it called, a host of some way, or someone's blood to give to the spiders, and he decided it would be his son's. I don't understand why. They kind of explained it throughout the movie, but I still don't understand why you take your son's blood just to put it into spiders. Doesn't make any sense, but that's exactly why the spider was able to give Peter Parker his powers, because he was perfectly genetically identified with the spider. So if you know by now, then you know that The Amazing Spider-Man 3 never actually happened. They had the idea for The Amazing Spider-Man 3, but it didn't go through because of a lot of problems with Sony and a lot of things with Andrew Garfield, and it just never happened. But we do see him back in The Amazing not The Amazing Spider-Man, in Spider-Man No Way Home. We see him back in Spider-Man No Way Home with a whole new outlook, and just he's a lot older and a lot more mature, and they try to play off of that. They try to give him a story. They try to give him his own story where he basically became a darker Spider-Man, with Gwen Stacy dying and him just not pulling his punches anymore. So you probably have a Spider-Man that killed, and that would have been super interesting to see. Like I just thinking about it makes me think like we need The Amazing Spider-Man 3, and it was like the most trending hashtag for a very long time. It might still be trending. I don't even know. But you had that hashtag that was super, super, super trending, where everyone just wanted to see what happened with The Amazing Spider-Man, and he became the most underrated Spider-Man. Yes, he had a very bad second movie, but the first movie was gold, and the third movie I think would have been pretty decent compared to, like, if they would have made it with the base of trying to get to that dark Spider-Man, then I would have loved it. But I did see some leaked ideas that they had for the movie, and it seemed like it was going to be a pretty wild movie, if I do say so. So, if you haven't seen the leaks, let me try to explain them. And the third installment of The Amazing Spider-Man, they were going to try to set up a bit more of the Sinister Six. I think that was the movie where the Sinister Six was going to like end up coming, and so they were going to have like this whole thing. But that's not the important part for me. The important part is that now that we have Spider-Man's dad, he's more in the mix, and so you have Spider-Man trying to reconnect with his dad. You have Spider-Man trying to get over the death of Gwen and Captain Stacy. But what happens in this movie is that somehow Spider-Man gets the ability to bring people back to life, and so he brings back both of them. I don't understand how that happened, and I'm pretty sure that's what I saw. Maybe I'm wrong about all of this, but I'm pretty sure that is what I saw from the leaks. And that would be crazy. And I personally wouldn't like it very much that they just like killed off Gwen Stacy and then all of a sudden like, yeah, the next movie she's back to life and everything is perfectly fine and he doesn't revive Uncle Ben, which is the reason why he became Spider-Man. Then you have the introduction of Mary Jane. You just have a lot of different things that they were trying to do with this movie. And I say thank the Lord that this movie was not made, because if it was made, then Spider-Man would have lost a lot of things. He would have lost everything, and a lot of people would have not liked it as much. And so now that we know what happened in No Way Home, and a lot of people wanting the new Spider-Man, it makes it a lot more compelling to tell his story, to tell the story of a Spider-Man that just let go, that just decided to become a anti-hero, because anti-heroes are the people that, if you don't know what an anti-hero is like a super villain slash hero that doesn't care about killing, that doesn't really care. He just wants his goals to be done, and a superhero cares about the needs of the people, and obviously a supervillain is a villain with superpowers. So you have him becoming a bit more like an anti-hero, where he wants to do the right thing and he's concerned with doing the right thing, but he's just lost so much, and he knows that what he needs to do is just finish crime and not really give much into it. Kind of like you see in Injustice. I think that is an amazing storyline, and I find that Superman regime very similar to this Spider-Man, where Spider-Man just lost almost everything. He basically just has his Aunt May, and that's that. He lost Gwen, he lost Captain Stacy, he lost Ben, and if they would have gone with the storyline and his dad was there, he would have gotten his dad back, but everything just seems so dull in his life. And so I'm very thankful that they didn't come out with that third Spider-Man movie. I hope that they do come out with The Amazing Spider-Man 3 and they make it so much better. They make it a dark Spider-Man that is going through a lot of phases. He might meet MJ and become a good Spider-Man again. But that's what I want to see. Sony, if you are listening, which I doubt it, but if you are listening, this is what you need to do. You need to make The Amazing Spider-Man 3. Start with the dark Spider-Man. Start with him just not pulling his punches, making people end up in the hospital, dead, worse. Whatever you need to do, just make that Spider-Man dark. Then add Aunt May finding out that Spider-Man became an anti-hero, and then say like, hey, what would Uncle Ben want? And make Spider-Man go through that. Make his, like, give him a character arc where he starts being a, kind of like the Dark Knight would say, you either die the hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Let him live long enough to see himself become the villain, but then realize that he needs to become a hero again. And so to do that, he needs to start believing in himself again. And so once he starts believing in himself, he starts to become a better person. He starts to lean more into Peter Parker and not so much into Spider-Man. And once he starts to lean into Peter Parker, he meets MJ, and then something happens and some villain tries to take MJ, and so Peter Parker becomes Spider-Man again with the intent to kill, but then he realizes that he doesn't need to do that anymore to feel complete. And Mary Jane decides that, like, finds out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and she stops him from doing something that he doesn't want to do. And it just add those scenes where you have a lost Peter Parker with a confident Mary Jane, and I can assure you that the fans will go crazy if that happens. Obviously, you have Sony trying to revive the Sonyverse, and with Morbius, bringing in Michael Keaton's Vulture, bringing him in. You obviously have Venom, which the only characters of those that do currently work is Venom. Yes, he had a very dodgy second movie, but it was a fun movie. It was a very interesting movie, and I just think that that's a Venom movie. You bring that Venom in with Tom Holland Spider-Man, or I think that the perfect thing would be to bring in Andrew Garfield Spider-Man with the Venom and giving him the symbiote. Like, do that. Restart the universe, but not from zero. Just bring in the Spider-Man that you already had, and that will be perfect. That is my idea, my opinion, my want for Sony to do and for Sony to listen for. I do say that the hashtag TASM3 might work someday. It worked with the Snyder Cut. Hey, the HBO ended up giving the money to Zack Snyder to make the Snyder Cut, and it became a huge success. It even won something in the Oscars, where it was the most cheered moment above Spider-Man No Way Home. It was such a good movie and such a good idea that I know that Sony can do something like that, and they can actually profit from it. Aside from Morbius, which like just became a whole meme on itself. Like, Sony needs to really look at what happened and try to bring it back, and definitely bring back Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. But hey, that is just what I think. That is just my theory and my ideas and my opinions. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video. If you did, definitely you should subscribe, hit the bell, like, follow on whatever platform you're listening on. As I said, episodes come out on Spotify of the podcast on Sunday, and I try to upload the YouTube videos around that, but hey, sometimes it gets a bit dicey when it comes to editing. But thank you all for listening. I hope you've enjoyed. Stay safe.